Now, I want to just sort of close this out by saying how Paul goes on in Romans 9, because it's very funny and important to talk about. Because he's setting up the straw man, who resists the will of God? Blaming it on God. The dog ate my homework. It's not my fault that I resist him. So then Paul's, rather terse reminder, well, where do you get the ability to talk back to God then? Duh. Now, shall the clay say to the potter, why did you make me like this? So you're not really clay because you can talk and the clay can't. So then he's going to continue the analogy. He's, in Greek debating technique, this is called first-class condition. If and pretend it's true. In other words, somebody's taking a process, and like this, the process here is nobody can resist God's will. And so in order to retort, you have a variety of ways you can respond. And one of them is that you can say, okay, let's pretend that what you're saying is true. Where would that lead us? And in Greek debating technique, you have to walk it all the way through, and you win the debate if logically you go from protasis to apodosis correctly. All right? So now Paul's going to do that. He said, who are you to talk back to God? Okay? Now, you can't talk back to God if you don't have free will. All right? But he's going to he's saying, look, are you clay? No. All right. But if you were, again, going back, first-class condition, pretending that you're clay, pretending that you have no ability to resist, that it's all God's fault, okay, well then if that's true, verse 21, Romans 9:21, doesn't the potter have the right to make you any way he wants? Again, who are you to talk back to God? You're just a lump of clay. According to you, you have no ability. It's all God's fault. Okay, well, fine. Even if it's God's fault, he has the right, because he's the potter, okay? But as Paul, my pastor stressed this a lot when he was exegeting this part of it. As Paul goes on with this line of logic, he starts to choke up. And in Greek, there's this, it's called an aposiopesis. And by the time he gets to verse 23, he can't go on anymore. Because he's saying, doesn't the potter have the right to make you any way he wants? If what you say were true, then the potter has the right to make you an ignoble vessel. I think some translations call it. Prepared for destruction. That's Romans 9:22. And what if he did that to make known the riches of his glory to the other vessels on whom he has mercy? Because, right now the allegation is still that God's being capricious, like the Calvinists say. Okay, so what if he did that to make his mercy known to the objects of mercy? The grace, okay, which is really extended to everybody, duh. So what if he did that? To make his glory known to the objects of his mercy, and then that's where Paul chokes up at the end of verse 23, and that's called an aposiopesis. It's kind of like, how do I put this in English? 9/11, when we saw that on TV, most of us were speechless. So if somebody was calling us during the thing, like if I got a phone call at the office, so we say, oh, hi, how are you, la la. Did you see the television? The planes flew into, and I wouldn't be able to go on. That's aposiopesis, when you can't finish the sentence. So that's what Paul does at the end of verse 23. He can't finish it, because the idea of the Jews, this was Paul's big falling point. This was what got him in trouble. The idea that the Jews are going to lose out, but we Gentiles get in. Sure, he wants the Gentiles to get in, but he doesn't want the Jews to lose out, and he can't take that. So he's all choked up with emotion at the end of verse 23. All right, and then, he recovers in verse 24, even us whom he also called, not only from the Jews, but also from the Gentiles. That closes his point in Romans 9. All right? I will have mercy on whom I'll have mercy. Well, who is that? Not only the Jews, but also the Gentiles. Now, again, an isagogical point is that the world, in the way Old Testament talks, and he's still using Old Testament concepts, so you have to follow them here. There were Jews and there were Gentiles. That the whole world was divided into you either Jews or Gentiles. So in verse 24, he's saying, even us, whom he also called, not only from the Jews, but also the Gentiles. Well, then that's everybody, okay? Everybody got called. Everybody. All right? God calls you in the sense when he makes your own soul at birth. Okay, well, then he wants you. He's electing to make you. That's an election too. There's actually two kinds of election in the Bible. All right? There's the election for any human being God makes because he's making you. He obviously wants you to live. He obviously wants to be with you, or he wouldn't make you in the first place. All right? The second election is, okay, but do you elect him? And if you do, he elects to save you. It's not, and this is where the Calvinists really get it wrong. They think that if God gives you a choice, and then he acts based on your choice, that somehow that's a lapse of sovereignty. No, it's an exercise of sovereignty. I mean, we all make exercises of sovereignty where we say, if this, then this. That's my will choosing. All right? If the mail comes, I'm going to the bank. Now, I could go to the bank without waiting for the mail, but I choose to wait for the mail. If so-and-so calls me and says, you know, he wants something I'm doing, I'll give it to him. That's not a lapse of my sovereignty. I'm making a choice based on somebody else's choice, yeah, but it's still my choice to make. So you see, this is why the Calvinist thing is so screwed up, is that conceptually, logically, grammatically, biblically, they really don't feel that God is God unless he's a tyrant. And they will color everything they read in the Bible based on that. Now, in the next increment, you're going to see how one of the unfortunate and rather could be funny results of it is that the Calvinists end up emulating the very Catholics they think they're refuting. And that's what I'm going to cover next. Or maybe I'll skip a video and cover that. But that's one of the things I'm going to cover in later videos. Okay, how do I turn this thing off? Bye.